The first sign that something was wrong came from a place no one expected. It wasn't a public argument, a leaked email, or a dramatic confrontation on set. It was a quiet disruption in the production schedule, a closed-door meeting added without explanation. Crew members noticed the tension immediately, not because voices were raised, but because they weren't. Silence like that usually means the problem has already gone too far. Behind the scenes, the bond between Heughan and Caitriona Balfe had begun to strain. Not visibly, not in a way cameras could capture, but in the subtle rhythms actors rely on. Timing slipped, emotional beats felt heavier than scripted. Scenes that once flowed now required extra takes, not because of lack of talent, but because something personal was pressing in from the edges. This wasn't about conflict in the usual sense. There were no arguments, no accusations, no obvious breakdown. Instead, there was exhaustion. Years of carrying intense emotional arcs on screen while guarding equally intense boundaries off-screen had blurred the line between performance and reality. When that line fades, even the strongest partnerships feel fragile. Whispers started circulating within the crew. One rumor suggested Sam was struggling to separate the weight of the story from his own life. Another claimed Caitriona was pulling inward, protecting herself from emotional burnout. None of it was confirmed, but the atmosphere shifted in a way veterans of long productions recognize instantly. That was when Ronald D stepped in. Not publicly, not with an announcement or a warning. He requested a private meeting, one that bypassed agents, press teams, and studio executives. When the creator of the entire world asks for silence and honesty, people understand the seriousness without being told. The meeting wasn't about ratings or deadlines. Ronald didn't open with numbers or contracts. He opened with a question that cut straight through professional armor. Are you both still okay doing this? It wasn't a test, and it wasn't rhetorical. It was an acknowledgement that something human was being stretched too far. For Sam, the question landed heavily. He had carried the responsibility of the role for years, not just as an actor, but as a symbol for millions of fans. Letting that weight show felt like failure, even when it wasn't. The strain had become constant, and pretending otherwise was no longer sustainable. Caitriona's response was quieter, but no less telling. She spoke about fatigue, about the pressure to remain composed while navigating expectations no one ever prepares you for. Playing intimacy convincingly while protecting your own emotional boundaries takes a toll. Over time, that toll doesn't disappear, it accumulates. Ronald listened without interruption. He didn't assign blame or offer quick solutions. He understood that what he was witnessing wasn't a professional dispute, but a bond under threat from prolonged intensity. The relationship between Sam and Caitriona wasn't broken, but it was overloaded. What made the situation dangerous was not disagreement, but silence. Neither had wanted to be the first to admit the cost. Doing so risked destabilizing the entire production, not to mention their personal equilibrium. But unspoken strain has a way of eroding trust, even between people who care deeply about their work and each other. Ronald recognized that immediately. He pointed out something neither of them had said aloud, that the Bond audiences loved was built on trust, not sacrifice. If continuing meant harming that trust, then no storyline was worth it. His role, he made clear, wasn't to push them forward, but to pull them back before damage became permanent. The tension in the room shifted. Not because the problem was solved, but because it had finally been named. Sam and Caitriona weren't failing, they were human. And for the first time in a long while, someone in power was treating them that way. Ronald proposed a pause, not in filming, but in expectations. Clearer boundaries, fewer emotional demands outside scripted work, permission to step back when needed without guilt. These weren't concessions, they were safeguards designed to preserve what still mattered. By the end of the meeting, nothing had been fixed. But something crucial had been prevented. The bond hadn't snapped, it had been acknowledged, protected, and given space to breathe. And sometimes, that intervention makes all the difference. Because saving a bond doesn't always mean repairing damage. Sometimes, it means stopping the damage before it becomes visible at all. The changes did not happen overnight, but they were unmistakable once filming resumed. Scenes were approached with renewed intention rather than pressure, and the urgency that had crept into every interaction slowly eased. Sam and Caitriona no longer pushed through exhaustion in silence. Pauses were allowed, adjustments made. What looked subtle on the surface marked a fundamental shift underneath. Ronald D stayed involved, but from a distance. He didn't hover or micromanage, nor did he position himself as a constant authority. His role was to ensure the space he had created remained intact. Sometimes leadership is not about presence, but about knowing when not to intrude. For Sam, the relief was gradual but real. He no longer felt compelled to carry the emotional weight alone or translate personal strain into performance. The permission to separate himself from the character outside of filming hours allowed something long suppressed to settle. That separation didn't weaken his work, it sharpened it. Caitriona experienced the shift differently, but just as deeply. The expectation to be endlessly composed had eased, replaced by an understanding that vulnerability did not equal instability. She reclaimed control over how much emotional energy she gave at any given moment. That autonomy restored a sense of balance she hadn't realized she was missing. The bond between them changed in tone, not in strength. It became quieter, more deliberate, less driven by instinct and more by mutual awareness. They communicated more directly, not about rumors or narratives, but about limits. Trust, once strained by silence, was rebuilt through clarity. Crew members noticed the difference almost immediately. The atmosphere on set felt steadier, less charged with unspoken tension. Fewer retakes were needed, not because scenes were simpler, but because emotions were no longer being forced. When actors feel protected, their performances breathe. What mattered most was what didn't return. The constant undercurrent of anxiety never resurfaced. No one pushed for old dynamics to be recreated for convenience or nostalgia. Ronald had made it clear that preserving the bond was more important than preserving a version of it audiences expected. This intervention wasn't about saving a storyline. It was about recognizing that long-term creative partnerships are living things, not resources to be extracted endlessly. Without care, even the strongest connections fray. With it, they evolve. Sam later reflected privately that the moment of intervention came just in time. Another season of silence might have done lasting damage, not only professionally, but personally. Being seen as human by someone in power changed how he saw his own limits. Strength, he realized, did not require constant endurance. Caitriona shared a similar realization. She no longer felt responsible for holding everything together through restraint alone. The bond did not depend on sacrifice, but on honesty about capacity. That understanding made collaboration feel sustainable again. The audience never saw the intervention itself. They only saw the results, performances that felt grounded, moments that carried weight without strain. Few understood how close things had come to tipping into something irreversible. That invisibility was intentional. Ronald never took credit, and he never needed to. His role was not to be remembered, but to ensure others could continue without breaking. By stepping in when he did, he protected not just a show, but two people navigating an unusually intense shared history. In the end, the bond was not saved, in a dramatic sense. It was preserved through restraint, respect, and timely acknowledgement of limits. No speeches, no promises, just boundaries honored at the right moment. And that may be the most powerful intervention of all. Not the kind that fixes what is broken, but the kind that prevents breaking from happening in the first place.